Hello everyone. Welcome to your pre-conference briefing for this year's annual conference. I want to thank personally for each of you to come out this afternoon or this evening and listen to this budget presentation and the remainder of our information for annual conference. Information and knowledge is a key to your understanding and ability to do your work at annual conference. From the Treasury Services Office perspective, I also want to provide as much transparency in this year's budget as possible, as much as is shareable at this point in time. So with that, let's go ahead and get started into the budget spreadsheet. Each of you should have a copy of the budget before you, the spreadsheet and the worksheet that we have developed for this year. Now this spreadsheet's a little bit different from what you've seen in the past because we've expanded the columns to give you more information as well as adding several line items, especially with the district's transition from 15 to 8 districts. So let's go ahead and take a look at that spreadsheet now and those line items just to get a good sense of what's going on in here. This budget is going to present not only the conference apportionments that you'll see, just as you've seen every year, but it's also going to present a more in-depth piece related to our districts. You'll see in Fund 504 that we have district office operations separated from district administrative personnel and district superintendents. Each of those will have their own and distinct line items just so we can go forward knowing of the specific pieces. We'll talk about those more a little bit later in the presentation. Additionally, you'll see that we have district benevolence grants, district missions and society, and district congregational vitality also lined out in this budget. Now right now those numbers are all showing at zero both for prior year and current year because as we go forward the districts will be providing that information to the conference so that we allocate and apportion specifically what the districts will need in the new 8 district configuration. From there, we haven't changed a whole lot. You'll see the same vision and goals line items, the same conference administrative support line items, the same general church and jurisdictional fund line items. Let's go ahead and take a look at the spreadsheet just so you can see those particular line items and where they show up on that spreadsheet. You'll see them highlighted in the red box here before you. After that, you'll also see that the columns across the page are slightly different than what you've seen in the past. We start out with the same 2011 actual, or your prior year actual numbers, what we've truly incurred and expended from the budget. But from there, you'll see it starts with the 2012 approved budget for conference funds, matching exactly what we did last year at annual conference. We have then added in a district office operational budget that was approved by the districts and apportioned to each of the churches proportionally or on some systematic formula in 2012. And then we show all of the increases and decreases related to specific items, whether it relates to the transition team or just normal fluctuations in a budget from year to year. The final column that you'll see on the far right-hand side will then be the 2013 budget for both conference and district operations, which will be presented to the annual conference for approval in June. From there, let's talk about each of those specific columns that you see there in the middle. We talked about the first two. I think those are fairly understandable. But column 3 relates specifically to the district operational budgets which have been apportioned to the churches. These were approved at the district level, not at the conference level, so you've not really seen these numbers in their total number before. But this is what this represents because we have to have a true apples to apples comparison when we get to the end. The next 3 columns, starting with column 4 then, represent the true fluctuations in the budget. If we look at the first one, column 4, increases or decreases due to transition. These are going to be the items that are specifically changed due to the transition team plan that has been laid out before you. The next column, column 5, represents the increases or decreases due to other factors. These are the normal fluctuations that we would anticipate within the budget from any year without any of the extraordinary things we're doing through the transition team. The final column, column 6, labeled redirection as a result of transition, relates to truly the redirection of some of the savings that we're seeing from the district reductions as we talked about last year. If you remember, we said that we would have savings, potentially even $1.5 million through the reduction of the 7 districts, but we would use some of that savings and redirect it into our specific vision and ministry, so that we would truly redirect the flow of attention, energy, and resources into that mission of making vital congregations within our conference. In doing so, you'll see the 3 areas of focus that have been selected for that redirection, specifically young adult ministries through campus ministries, leadership development, as well as congregational vitality. We'll see that a little bit later in the presentation. With that, let's go into the items that are within this budget and see those changes within those columns. Now let's start with the simple ones first and go all the way down to the bottom of the summary schedule. You'll see those are labeled General Church and include the 7 funds of the General Church as well as the 2 funds of the Jurisdictional Church. Now automatically we have a whole brand new budget because this is a new quadrennium. Each of these 2 distinct organizations have already submitted and approved budgets at this point so that we know where we're going to be when we get into 2013. General Conference just finished up in May, and when that budget was approved, we had a little over $603 million for the entire quadrennium. That was a 6.6% decline. However, with the changes in the way the proportional expenses are between the annual conferences, based purely on the statistics that are reported from your local churches, we have a little bit larger share than we've had in the past, but we still have a reduction in our general church budget of 3.3%. If you look at the jurisdiction, however, we've gotten a lot of savings there. At the last jurisdictional conference in 2008, the conference voted to say that all of the 6 agencies of the southeastern jurisdiction would be self-sustaining by the end of 2012. In doing that, there is no longer any operational funding within the jurisdictional budget for those 6 different jurisdictional agencies. Because of that, the budget is mightily reduced, and you'll see that number there as you go through and highlighted on the screen before you. Just so you'll know, those particular agencies will be the Lake Junaluska Assembly, Gulfside Assembly in Mississippi, the Hinton Rural Life Center here in North Carolina, the Southeastern Jurisdiction UMAR, Southeastern Jurisdiction Volunteers in Mission, as well as the Intentional Growth Center. Okay, now let's go up to the top of that summary schedule and go ahead and work ourselves down through the remaining line items. You'll see that the first line item is Fund 504, which represents the district operations. Now, this year we have separated those particular things into the district superintendent's salary and benefits, the district office personnel salary and benefits, and then the district office operations. Now, for the district superintendents, we really haven't changed a lot. We did go ahead and provide for a small cost of living adjustment to their salaries, especially due to the role changes and the increasing role that they would have in a much larger district. We also included some mileage line items into this particular line because they were going to be traveling a whole lot more. So we've got about $11,000 per district showing up in that line item. Again, there's also increases in the benefits, especially related to the medical costs. That particular item you're going to see in the district office personnel as well. Now with the district office personnel, administratively, the transition plan has provided for 1 full-time person and 2 part-time people. So right now that's what's included as a part of our district administrative personnel showing up in this particular spot. And then following that is the district office operations. This amounts to an equal dollar amount which will be given to each of the districts for the true office operations. Place for copies, supplies, mail, telephones, etc. All those particular types of things. Rent, should that particular office rent an office. From there you'll see funds 521, 522, and 523. These represent the district mission societies, district benevolence grants, and the district congregational development items that will be forthcoming later in the fall. Again, these will be apportioned by the districts, specifically through their budgets, and decide what that's going to be, then come to us for collection. The next line item we'll see is 506, equitable compensation. This is one that you've seen in the past and relates to different grants or funding for those particular churches who cannot fully support a minimum salary for their pastor. You'll see that this line item has been reduced by $50,000 in the current year, just due to the reduction in the number of grants that we seem to have had over the past several years. The next line item is 507, incapacity benefit supplementation. This relates to our clergy folks who are on incapacity leave. Now you'll see that we have a slight increase in this line item for the year, but it's purely because of the medical costs related to the benefits that we need to provide for these persons. We have not anticipated any additional persons needing to be in incapacity leave in the coming year. The next large line item that you'll see is fund number 505, and this is our total conference support. In this particular line item, this is primarily the administrative costs of the annual conference. And there's several line items that are included in here and changes in this budget that you need to understand both from a transition team standpoint as well as just normal operations. So let's talk about a few of those right now. One of the things we've noted is a decrease in the cost of the cabinet meetings. And you'll see that line item in Schedule 1 on the next page. This is due to the decline in the number of district superintendents that will be traveling to these meetings. However, because of the largely changing role that each of these district superintendents have, we have expanded the number of meetings or the number of days of meetings that they may have, also in connection with some of the conference staff, as us being a resource to the districts going forward. Next big line item that you'll see as an increase is the contingency fund. Now, some folks may want to stop and say, hey, wait a minute, why do we need a contingency fund? But this year in particular, we've increased this line item by $150,000 because we're just now seeing what the plan looks like and working ourselves into this plan to be operational by the beginning of 2013. We anticipate that we've covered everything in this budget, but we just can't be sure. So we added just a little bit more dollars in the contingency fund just in case we've missed something that we shouldn't have. The next line item relates to the administrative staff support salaries and benefits. The largest part of this increase is due to a couple of additional people who will be coming to the annual conference. One is related to the transition plan. If you remember in that plan, we've decided to add in a conference camping director. This person will work with each of our 7 district camps, trying to create a better program that fits in with the vision and ministry of the conference and better makes us connectional as we go forward. In addition, it's trying to get those camps to be more self-sustaining through those programs and not have a lot of funding from our districts as they have had in the past. We think this will be a grand idea and have included that in the budget. Additionally, in this particular line item, outside of the work of the transition plan, we've also had some increases, just normal cost of living increases that we believe potentially we will be giving to our staff at the conference. But we've also added an Associate Director of Ministry Services. This person will aid our Director of Ministry Services in facilitating the recruitment of seminary students and making those connections with each of the theological seminaries as we try to find new, younger clergy to come join our conference. From there, we've also seen increases in the communications as well as the information technology line items. Both of these line items really relate primarily to the transition plan. There's a little bit of extra, but not anything close to what's related to the transition plan. What we're seeing in there is that with the conference creating a new website in 2012, we also need to make the district websites be very much like that one. And we're planning to do that implementation as we go into 2013 so that everything is connected together and making it much easier for any person in our conference to navigate our websites and get to the districts very easily. For an information technology, this really relates to some of the making of a virtual office for our district superintendents. If you remember from the transition plan, if you have read it or as you've heard earlier, you'll see that we're talking about our district superintendents not being in the office more than 1 day per week. If they're out in the field, meeting with ministers, meeting with the churches and the various laity groups of the churches, then they need to have information at their fingertips. So we're looking to create many more electronic files and many more electronic records for their support for both the conference and the district level. This will involve a major project for us here at the conference office and with the district personnel still in place, as well as those coming forward, so that is really most of our information technology increase for the year. One last increase in this section is for the Board of Ordained Ministry, and you'll see that that has an increase of a little over $20,000. Really, only things that's happened is we've moved one piece of the budget over, and that's for the covenant peer groups. Because those relate so well to our clergy and the ordained ministry groups that we have, we've moved those out of our vision and goals budget and moved them closer to where they really should have the oversight. Our final fund then to review is Fund 508, and that relates to our vision and goals. And there's 2 main things that are happening here. One, we do have some increases and decreases, but the main part of what we're doing is the redirection of some of the savings that we're realizing from our district reductions. As I talked about earlier, you'll see that we have increases in 3 line items. The Western North Carolina Council on Campus Ministers, which represents the young adults in our conference, will be increasing approximately $133,000 or 34%. Our leadership development, which is really looking to be inclusive of both clergy and laity in the coming year, has increased $133,000 or 69.9%. Congregational vitality then has also increased $100,000 or 54%. These line items are where we are redirecting the district savings. In addition to those three large increases, there's also some other increases and decreases that you should note. Our benevolence grants have declined about $30,000, really related to how many different grants we actually receive. We're hoping with the advent of these new dollars in congregational vitality, leadership development, and the campus ministries, additional grants will be going away. The Justice and Reconciliation team agreed that they wanted to have one main line item and not the four that they had currently, so that they can do their own type of benevolence grant process within that team. With that, they've asked for approximate $40,000 reduction in their line items. Our New Faith Communities, or our church plants, has asked for an increase of $50,000 to again do their work in a much more effective manner. And then, lastly but not least, for our children's homes and retirement communities, because these aren't our biggest focus within our vision and ministry, but we still recognize their connectional nature to our own conference, we have chosen to include a reduction in each of those line items, using those dollars really in our mission and ministry, but still recognizing that they are a part of our affiliated group. With all of those changes, we end up with our total budget, as you can see, including all district operations, at $15,772,756. This represents a reduction of just over $1 million, $1,030,525 over the prior year conference and district operational budgets. Realize this is a reduction of 6.1% for our overall conference. Now, I hope this has provided you a lot of information. I'm sorry I couldn't be there with each and every one of you, but a representative from our Council on Finance and Administration is there to answer any questions that you have. If there are other questions that arrive, please feel free to call me at the conference office and I'll be glad to answer anything I can. Until then, thank you for your attention and I'll see you at the lake.